Hey guys, welcome to Chapter 2, Lesson 5 on the reasons for the rise of big business. So last lesson was about the rise of industry. And industry just means you're making things with machines on a massive scale. That's what makes it an industry. So if you're in their basement burning CDs, you're not part of the recording industry. But if you can make hundreds of thousands of CDs in your basement, well, now you're a part of the recording industry. So now, how do you go from an industry to a big business? If you turn back to the previous page, you'll notice that on the bottom we had these little factories coming out of the hopper, the little funnel that we were tossing FIG workforce into. Out comes factories for steel and oil and railroad. Now, what's coming out of the hopper on the bottom of this page is one factory for steel and one factory for oil and one factory for railroad. What that means is the business has in some ways become smaller, but also much, much larger. That's big business. So big business is what makes it go from the millions to the billions. And it's when it starts to kind of get a monopoly. A monopoly means you have one business controlling the industry. So this lesson, why don't you go ahead and just copy the notes down and we'll talk about what it means. So go ahead and pause it right now. And good. Now make sure at the bottom to also copy down the guys' names here. So Rockefeller, Carnegie, and Vanderbilt. Could you please copy their names down now? And unpause. Good. The mnemonic here is CAPN, C-A-P-N. It comes from Cap'n Crunch.
There's nothing like the real Cap'n Crunch.
So Cap'n Crunch cereal, CAPN. And it's also to remind you of the first thing that it stands for, the C. So reason for the rise of big business. How do you go from the millions to the billions? How do you go from several companies in an industry to one company controlling the entire industry, a big business? First, you have your captains of industry. First thing you need is someone who's the leader, someone to stand out and to lead and direct the industry, and somebody who's has the instincts and somebody who has the vision, sometimes the ruthlessness, the ability to lie and deceive, but also to be very likable and charismatic. It's a strange mixture of personality traits that we often call a captain of industry. The captain of industry is kind of the first thing you need to take your industry from millions to a big business with billions. And four of the most noteworthy ones are John Rockefeller. John Rockefeller is the wealthiest American in history, and he's one of the wealthiest men in all history. He is in the oil industry, but he will buy up several small businesses and create Standard Oil. Also Andrew Carnegie, a captain of the steel industry, and he too will also be kind of the have a near monopoly on steel manufacturing in America. And then third is Cornelius Vanderbilt. Same thing. He'll go from somebody in the railroad industry to somebody who kind of merges companies together and has a near monopoly on the railroad industry. And fourth is J.P. Morgan. J.P. Morgan, John Pierpont Morgan, becomes a captain of the banking industry. Banking being the key thing to all these companies. You need to have money to buy up other businesses or to get your own business started. So JP Morgan and banking. The next thing you need to have is brand recognition. Everyone needs to know who you are. They need to think of your company first above all others. So an example of that would be Standard Oil. Like when you say we are the Standard Oil, what you're really saying, the name sounds kind of boring now, but for John Rockefeller, that was a way of saying our oil is the best quality. And so all the advertising that he did said, we are the one brand you trust, the one brand you want. And if you can get people to think of your brand first and use your brand first, that is the ticket to going from an industry to a big business. So along with that, so you have captain of industry, you have advertising, but if you really want to get your business into the $1 billion range, eventually $1 trillion range, you need to have your costs under control. How can you lower your costs? Because your profits are the money that comes in minus the things you've spent money on. So if you sell something for $10, but it cost you $9 to make it, you only profited by $1. So you want your price to be low, but you want your costs to be even lower. And so if you can figure out how do I lower those costs, well, one way is you can kill your competition. If there's no competition, then your price can go up. You can buy up the things that you need to make your product. Another one would be the assembly line. That speeds things up. It lowers your costs. You don't have to make things quicker and faster and then cheaper. And so you can, use your employees more efficiently. Also, if you're the only game in town, you can also charge your workers or pay your workers a lot less. So that's kind of how you lower your production costs. The assembly line is brought to us by Henry Ford. Henry Ford automobiles. He makes the Ford Model T. Like the Apple iPhone, the Ford Model T is not the first product in its category. So there were smartphones before the iPhone, but the iPhone was the one that kind of reached the point where it was affordable enough to be so commonly used that it kind of changed the whole industry. The Ford Model T is a car that was affordable enough because it used an assembly line. So the costs of making it were lower, so the price could be lower. So now everybody can afford, or the workers who built it could afford to buy it. And the last thing you need is to open your product up to a national market. A market is not necessarily just a store, like a supermarket or a grocery market. It is, but a market is really just any place where you can sell a product. And that could be a market as in a literal building, or it can be a market like an entire country or a new region of a country, or it can be an age group or a demographic or a group of people. So when you have the country getting bigger, but you can't reach people, having the railroad finally connect with the transcontinental railroad means now you've opened up a national market. The whole nation is now a market for your products. You can sell to them, especially when you have what's called the mail order catalog. Mail order catalog is kind of the internet of its time. The first one was Sears Roebuck. Sears is a company that's kind of under some hard times lately. But Sears was a mail order catalog company, which means you could buy things. You could even buy a house at some point through a catalog. It's like the internet. So you can buy something and have it sent to you. So in that way, there's no place in America where you can't sell a product, even if they're far away from your store. So that's kind of the other ticket is some stores can only get as big, or some industries can only get as big as they have people to sell to. We find this now with some products where if you run out of people who don't have your iPad or your tablet, like right now, a lot of families already have a tablet. and they don't want another one. And so the iPad sales go down. They need to find a new market to sell the things to, or find a new product or a new version of it that everyone wants so you can keep selling it. But if you run out of people to buy it, doesn't matter how much you make or how many you make or how much you sell it for. If no one can buy it, or if everyone already has one, your market is too small. Grow your market, find a new country, find a new region, find a new demographic to sell to. All that stuff is part of a market. There we go. So, CAPN, reasons for the rise of big business.
I have a plan.
What's that?
It's my duplicate zombie hypno ray.
Oh,